In India, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013 POSH Act is a primary legislation that seeks to ensure the protection of women against sexual harassment at the workplace. The POSH Act defines sexual harassment or any unwelcome act or behavior, whether directly or by implication, namely physical or contact and advances or demand or request for sexual favors or making sexual colored remarks or showing pornography or any unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. Hence, acts like indulging in sexual insinuations and abusive and intimidating behavior would need to be perceived within the ambit of sexual harassment. Hi, this is Nikhil Sharma. Today we are going to talk about sexual harassment at workplace in remote working time. Further, the POSH Act has been very clear with its definition of workplace and employee, thus making virtual offices and employees working remotely well with the purview of the Act. It defines workplace in an inclusive and non-exhaustive manner to include within its purview any place visited by the employee in the course of employment, including a dwelling place or a house. Therefore, it can be construed that the employee's own home would be included within the purview of a workplace. While obscene instances such as Zoom masturbation become headlines, more common examples of incivility and harassment can include unwelcome comments about an employee's appearance, demeanor, physical surroundings, and productivity or political beliefs. The inability to cover one's identity has particularly been challenging for the LGBTQ women, who are more likely to report lower levels of mental well-being and work-life balance during the pandemic. These same women are nearly 4 times more likely to say they have experienced jokes of sexual nature than non-LGBTQ women, and they are less likely to view their employees as supportive. Experts have claimed that incidents of workplace sexual harassment have dramatically increased during the COVID pandemic, and sexual predators have found new tools to threaten and abuse women. Instances of such workplace sexual harassment misconduct included taking screen captures during video calls without permission and circulating them on social media, managers demanding sexual pictures from their colleagues and employees, managers even demanding impromptu meetings post office hours using phallic emoticons and offering to send pictures. The National Commission for Women in India has recently disclosed that the cases of sexual harassment had seen an upsurge by 5 times since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. Vishaka and others versus State of Rajasthan and others. In this case, Supreme Court laid down the following guidelines which recognize it not only as a private injury to an individual woman but also as a violation of her fundamental rights. These guidelines are significant because for the first time sexual harassment is identified as a separate category of legally prohibited behavior. These are subjected to all workplaces until any other legislation is passed by Parliament in this regard. The guidelines are as follows. First, it is a duty of every employer to deliver a sense of security to every woman employed. Government should make strict laws and regulation to prohibit sexual harassment. Any act of such nature should result in disciplinary actions, and criminal proceeding should also be brought against the wrongdoer. The organization should have a well set up complaint mechanism for the redressal of the complaints made by the victim and should be subjected to a reasonable time. This complaint mechanism should be in the form of complaint committee, which need to be headed by a women member, and at least 50% of the committee members should be women, so that victims do not feel ashamed while communicating their problems. This complaint committee should also have a third party involvement in the form of NGO or other body which is familiar with this issue. There is a need of transparency in the functioning of this committee, and for that there is a requirement of submission of annual report to that government. Issues relating to sexual harassment should not be a taboo in the workers' meeting and should be discussed positively. It is a duty of the organization to aware the female employees about their rights by regularly informing them about the new guidelines issued and legislation passed. The employer or the person in charge in duty biased to take the necessary and reasonable steps to provide support to the victim if sexual harassment take place due to the act or omission of the third party. These guidelines are not limited only to government employers and should also be followed by employers in private sectors. In 2008, the High Court of Delhi in the case of Saurabh Kumar Malik versus the Comptroller and Auditor General of India held that the expression workplace could not be narrowly described to confine its meaning to the uncommonly understood expression of an office. That is a place where any person of the public could have access. The court further held that if a person conducting work through video conferencing indulges in the act of sexual harassment with an employee, it cannot be open for him to say that he had not committed the act at a workplace. Recently, the High Court of Rajasthan, in its judgment in the case of Sanjeev Mishra versus Bank of Baroda, has widened the scope of the term workplace harassment to include online harassment. What steps to take? The difficulty for businesses in recognizing and responding to sexual harassment is exacerbated by remote working. To prevent sexual harassment in remote workplace, the company should create a set of guidelines, which should include: first, examine current policies. Organization must ensure that current POSH rules are evaluated and modified to reflect changes in working arrangements. Number 2, set expectations. Organization may consider implementing obligatory POSH training, which would include not to be concentrated only to topics like as dressing appropriately and keeping conversation to work related matters, but ensuring that employees completely understand what is and what is not suitable in the case of a video conference. Number 3, publicize reporting procedures. Employees should be given clear instructions on how to report any instances on sexual harassment. The POSH policy should be available on the company's intranet or another remotely accessible source, and it should be simply to use. Number 4 and last, be responsive. If an employee makes a sexual harassment complaint, it should be addressed with care, thoroughness, and speed. Reporting sexual harassment occurrences can be difficult since victims may experience feeling of guilt and shame, as well as fear of retaliation. Employers must keep in mind that employees have likely put significant lot of time and anxious energy in their jobs. So this was all about sexual harassment at the workplace in COVID times. I hope you like this video, and if you like this video, do like, share and comment and subscribe our channel. Thank you.